Welcome back, hustlers. On today's episode, I have Tristan Sopp, who is the product designer and also the founder of Resident joining me. So Resident is a really interesting company. They produce DIY papercraft animal kits, which are extremely fun to build and are perfect for kids and adults. They look really, really amazing. You can check them out on www.residentdesign.com. And they focus on creating animal-inspired paper products that are really interesting, very beautiful, but made so that it's simple and easy and fun to build. And their paper animal kits are great for any skill level and range in price from $25 onwards and ship for free nationwide within the United States. And Tristan has always been a creative that believes in making high quality designs that people will love and appreciate building and having in their homes. And Tristan started off as an architecture student in college, and that's where he realized that he was attracted to the construction aspect of making items. And that's not just limited to buildings, as you can see in his work on his website residentdesign.com. And ultimately, this realization led him to starting Resident in 2015, and he's been running it ever since. So guys, if you're interested to listen to Tristan's journey and story, stay tuned to the end of this episode. Hey Tristan, welcome to the show. So let's start off by introducing yourself and your company, Resident.
My name is Tristan Sopp, and my company is Resident. I make and manufacture paper kits that people make into sculptures.
So I checked out your LinkedIn profile, and it shows that you worked a few other jobs before starting Resident. So can you tell me a little bit more on how you transitioned from a full-time job to running Resident?
I think that I had the good fortune to work for a lot of small companies in succession. So I started working with a small whiskey distillery here in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I worked at a tech startup for a year and a half before I started Resident full-time. And in both those positions, I really enjoyed kind of working directly with the owners of the companies and working on some of their big picture decisions. Mm-hmm. But I found that I struggled a lot with disagreeing with the decisions that they were making as a company. And I really wanted to be able to control the direction of my own work and the sort of thing that I was putting my energy into. So I really enjoyed that experience of working with small companies, but I think I'm better suited to run my own because I did not do well when other people make decisions I thought were really bad decisions.
Right. So that takes you off, huh? When people go against what you believe. Is that what you're saying?
Honestly, it was about where are we focusing our energy? So I really enjoy the whiskey distillery here in Pittsburgh called Wiggle Whiskey, but I would have loved to have really focused in on some core product lines. I was waking up at 4 a.m. and making whiskey for them, but was finding that they weren't valuing, working on really extremely high quality spirits. They were really into experimentation, but not taking what they learned from those experiments and applying them to the next iteration. And then when I was working for the tech company, I honestly didn't think that my position or any of the people that were doing kind of the work that I was doing there, we made sense. I thought we should have been focusing all our time and energy and money on the tech platform. This is a company that was working in the job hiring space called Imagine Careers, which has since closed down. And I was hired to do the people side and operations work, but we didn't have a product really to even be working on. So I was kind of advocating that I shouldn't even be there for the year and a half that I was there. And so that was a nice transition out of there because I shouldn't have been an employee there because I didn't think my job should have existed. So it's stuff like that mostly where I think that what I can do or what I can offer just wasn't being very well utilized. And at the same time, the company was just making different decisions than what I would have in their shoes.
Right. So let's dive deep a little bit behind Resident. What was the inspiration behind starting it?
I have always always loved building things. Like I remember in third grade at daycare after school, I learned how to knit. And it was just so much fun to make things out of yarn and needles. And I did weaving and I did crocheting. And it slowly all built up into like anything I could get my hands on and learn how to do, I loved doing. So I've done metalworking, I've done a lot of woodworking. And then I've kind of seen like just all around me people loving DIY type stuff. But if I jump on a site like Pinterest that has a lot of those DIY projects, I generally found that the actual like end result, the design quality was pretty poor. So I'd always, even throughout all these jobs I've been working, have been doing stuff for my apartment, things that I found interesting, dressers, projects that were just fun. And I kind of saw a bit of a gap there of like high quality design that was also DIY. So I had found a project that was similar to what my kits are, these paper sculptures, that I thought was a really cool concept. And I really enjoyed, just for my own enjoyment, kind of working on the design side of 3D modeling these sort of sculptures and then actually turning them into a paper sculpture on my wall. And that was kind of my start of thinking maybe there's a product here for other people that are interested in making things with their hands. I did go to school for design, so that's always been something I've loved, but I've never really enjoyed or thought that I did good design work, if that makes any sense, until I started working on these sculptures and things really started clicking for me pretty quickly once I started designing them and seeing what I could create.
Right. So, like, do you love what you're doing right now?
I found that what I love the most is running a small business. I think going into this, I probably expected it would be about the products, but I really love getting the feedback from people. I love all the different challenges that come. And being 4 full years into this business, I have kind of hit a really great point where things are working well. And I have to like pick my next challenges. Whereas when you start a business at the very beginning, like those first couple years, the challenges are really obvious because you have to make things work. You have to try to figure out revenue. You have to try to figure out sourcing if you're doing a physical product. A lot of those challenges are really natural at the beginning. And now I have so many of those early ones solved that I actually kind of feel a weird stagnation of I have to kind of like figure out what are my next challenges that I'm taking on. And so one of those challenges is I'm actually working on a physical retail space at the moment. And so I think I enjoy just the problem of running a small business the most, actually.
Right. So, can you tell me a little bit more about the printers and the screens behind you? I'm assuming that they're for resident work.
Yeah, this is my manufacturing space behind me. The third floor of my house is just dedicated to my design and then also manufacturing of my products. I buy paper in like crazy amounts of bulk. I'm using cardstock paper, and then I'm printing everything locally. I do have a couple printers I work with, and I print some stuff right here in my house. Then I have all these cutters that are run by different laptops. So they operate kind of like little CNC machines. They are meant for scrapbookers, but the nice thing about them is that I can pour any sort of cut file I want to into them. And they've been working really well to me, to the point well for me. They work well enough that I actually have 5 that I run concurrently to cut out these kits. Usually while have the 5 cutters going, I'm taking the pieces off from the last 5 sheets of paper that were cut, or 4 sheets of paper, whatever the number is. And so I'm assembling each kit one at a time so I can make sure that the quality is great. I'm looking at every single piece. I know that every piece for that kit is going into the bag. So that's what you see behind me are all the cutters to cut out each kit.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned that you are opening a retail studio physical space, right? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Right now, it's a concept. I was fortunate enough to be able to buy a retail space in a pretty high activity area here in Pittsburgh called Lawrenceville. And this commercial building my background in architecture meant that I kind of have always wanted to renovate a building, and I've worked construction, and like I said, I love working with my hands. So I'd always wanted to build my own house, and I think renovating a building is pretty similar to that. So I got the opportunity to buy this building in Lawrenceville. It's a first floor retail space. We got a couple floors of apartments above that. My girlfriend and I will be living in one of those apartments. We're going to be renting another apartment out, but then the first floor is going to be dedicated studio space, and either some light retail, maybe some heavy retail on that first floor space. But we don't have a solid game plan on that because most of our effort has been on renovating the whole thing. So tomorrow we're spending all day cleaning brick with wire brushes.
Right. So it's an outlet for your creativity, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's fun to come up with a vision for what a space could be when you see it in its not great state, and then to tear that apart, but still be able to see that vision. And even though we have a lot of days where it feels really bad, like it's never going to get done, we're slowly getting there. So it's really fun to work on, as hard as it is.
Okay, so here's a juicy question for you. So when you just started out a few years back, when you just started Resident, how did you get your first customers?
My very first customer was actually at an in-person show. So in Pittsburgh here, I decided to do I was able to rent out a little space, just a 10 by 10 booth essentially at a local event called Maker Faire. That was for people that just really enjoy making things. So It was laser cutters, CNC machines, hobbyists, all sorts of stuff that was all around this space of this term making. And so I did a booth there, which I don't even remember how much it cost me, but I had 3 designs and I brought some of these kits, and it was just a trial run. It might have been like $150 or something for a booth for 2 days, just to see if anyone would even buy these. And I sold 10 kits, and my initial price at that time was $80 a piece. And I was a little depressed because I thought that, I was going to sell all of these, like a little optimistically. I thought everything would sell out immediately. But I had a good friend who gave me a reality check and said, like, that's your proof of concept. People are excited to, purchase these at this small little show you did. So that's kind of been my testing ground throughout, is going to these in-person events where I'm able to put my stuff up and talk to customers directly. So in person was my first sale.
Right. So what has changed now, in terms of your product and how you get your customers?
It's still a lot of in person. So I find that with my products, these sculptures, you notice I'm going to describe them a couple different ways throughout this whole conversation, because there's not one way that makes the most sense, and you don't fully get the impact of them until you see them in person. There's something about the size and the scale and the presence of these sculptures, like in a space where they really do feel like it's taxidermy. It's an animal maybe you bagged out on the hunt, except these are all made of paper and you're folding and gluing them together. So nothing was killed in the process of making these. But I still find that in person, like the look on people's eyes when they see them and are looking at them and just don't even know what to think about them, like that does more for me than anything I can do online. So I struggle with that. I do have to travel for these different craft shows to try to get in front of people, but that is by far the best spot for people to see what these are, get an idea of what it'd be like for them to actually take one of these home and then ultimately purchase.
So I guess it makes sense, investing in that physical and retail space so that people can experience it firsthand as well.
Yeah, we're hoping so. We're hoping that we'll be able to do some workshops as well. I'm hoping to be able to do a lot of different varieties of products. So I'm not forever known as just that paper animal guy, because I don't think I can do that forever. I do think I can make some really awesome lights. I think I can do some cool, more abstract type work. So I really hope that this space actually will force me to explore, because I can't just do all of one thing forever and expect people to continue to come back for that.
Right. So is there an artist that particularly inspires you and your work?
There isn't. I really don't have anyone I think I look to on the design side a whole lot. As strange as that sounds, I don't know if I've ever really thought about that. I really, really love a couple more abstract artists and some found nature artists like Andy Goldsworthy, but I don't really follow closely anyone kind of directly doing the same sort of style of work that I'm doing. And I think partly that's because there isn't a whole lot. I do get pictures and emails from people asking occasionally if, was that my work in the Denver airport? I'm not sure if it's actually Denver, but there are some of these installations that people have been doing out of metal that are a similar sort of low polygon 3D style, which is really, really awesome to see. But I actually don't have a whole lot of people I follow, though maybe I need to use that to learn from other people, and I should be.
Right. So where do you get your inspiration from? Other than, since it doesn't come from a specific person or artist?
A lot of it is honestly either long car rides or really long days when I'm sitting in my booth at these shows. As much as I love interacting with people at these shows, my more natural tendency is to be an introvert. And so I do find I have a lot of long stretches where it just gets kind of exhausting. And I find myself problem solving kind of inside my head. And it's the same way with long car rides. Like, they're always really exhausting. And there's something about like 2 or 3 hours into a 6 or 7 hour long car ride where I just find my brain like wandering to like, yeah, that space. I'm almost always thinking about my own home for some reason. Like, yeah, it'd be really great to do this thing on the ceiling, or I would love to have this up on the wall. And that's where I'm always sketching down ideas. And unfortunately, my problem isn't too few ideas. It's way, way, way too many, and not knowing how do I prototype and test the sort of things I would love to try out quick enough. So most ideas kind of get buried in my sketchbooks, but there are a couple that I keep coming back to. And I hope that means that those are the good ones to pursue. So I do need to be prototyping more. I do need to be designing more. Especially, I think, if I want my business to survive long term as the only person working on it, just me, it all kind of falls on my shoulders.
Right. So do you bring your sketchbook everywhere you go? It sounds like it's your go-to tool for everything you need.
Yeah, I always just have a little pocket notebook. I think that it's so easy for stuff to get stuck in your head, and I need to get it out of there. I'm not someone who's crazy organized and has, I'm always going back through and checking off stuff and turning that into a different list. I haven't found that's worked well for me, but maybe I should be more organized. But I do always have a small sketchbook on me to sketch down those ideas when I'm at hour 10 of a 12-hour day at a show and I've been talking to people all day, and I look up and something catches my eye, or I see another artist near me and I've just been admiring their work all day, and it makes me think of something else I could do, which happens. So I like having something there to at least write down in.
Right. As a solo founder, I'm pretty sure you wear many, many hats, and you multitask and you do a lot of things. So I'm just curious, how does your day-to-day look like?
It totally varies. At the moment, I'm not working on the business much at all because all my efforts are towards this building that we're renovating. If I look back earlier this year, what a normal week looks like for me, some days I'm spending all day on manufacturing and I'm trying to crank out these kits the best way I can and keep my inventory up. Other days, I'm trying to go to space outside of my home where I am sitting and trying to do design work. I don't get as much of that as I should. I'm responding to customer emails. I'm dealing with random stuff with accounting. Like you said, it's a little bit of everything. And I'm kind of always halfway between playing catch up and trying to plan ahead. But I think I tend to be on the catch up side a little bit more often than I would like to be on the working ahead side.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, do I sound okay? Because I just heard something disconnect. Just double checking.
Yeah, you sound fine to me.
Cool. So what is one thing you wish you knew before you started Resident?
I was afraid of a lot of things that ended up being like really not big hurdles at all. I spent at least a month terrified I'd make a wrong decision about how to set up the legal structure of my company, when the right answer was do anything, because the indecision is worse than making a decision that you have to change later. So as much as possible, I've tried to figure out, how do I quickly test something, or just trust that this sounds like it makes sense. I'm going to try it. If I need to do something different, I can, because it's really easy to change things, I find, very fast.
Right. So basically, action is better than inaction.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I found has been by far the biggest thing I wish I learned earlier, because that would have got me going a lot quicker versus sitting there agonizing over decision at the end of the day didn't matter that much, because what mattered was get started.
Yeah. So take action, hustlers. Like a lot of things might seem like a big deal to you, but in actual fact, it's just another problem that can be solved, I think. Right.
And trusting that you can figure it out. How do you pay sales tax in this state? Like that's one Google away. Like that's easy. You just go through that stuff. Can't figure it out, there's going to be an email, there's going to be someone to call. It's easy to build up any of these tasks. Like my very first, when I first started the company, I did it as a sole proprietor, and then I changed to an LLC, but I paid LegalZoom to do that both times. Well, it turns out the form from the state of Pennsylvania is literally one page. Like, why I couldn't look that up and figure that out and submit it for cheaper myself at the beginning, I have no idea. But now that I've formed two other companies in the meantime, which are unrelated. One was I had to form a company to buy this building, because that's just how commercial real estate works. Like it's so easy to do this stuff, and it seems really hard and complicated before you do it, and then after you do it, you're like, that's not hard at all. So yeah, there's always that figuring out, but I think I've learned to really trust that whatever it is, I can figure it out.
Yep. Really, really awesome tips right there. So I'm curious, over the past few years running Resident, have you made any mistakes or that you can particularly remember of?
Absolutely. I think that
What
there's
was
no
your
way
most
I wouldn't.
expensive? What was your most expensive mistake that that you've learned a huge lesson from?
Trying to think about what I've spent the most money on that would be counted as a mistake. I think I've luckily been able to keep the downside to any of my mistakes pretty low. I think the biggest I can think of is actually this last January. I went to a wholesale show in Atlanta. So I had the cost of my travel, I had the cost of my room there, I had the cost of the show. And I normally am really good at trusting my gut and getting verification from other people about, is this a good idea for me to do? And so this last January, it was the first time I've ever gone to a show that I lost money at. I'd been dabbling in wholesale, so selling directly to retailers and having them, representing my brand in their shop and paying for that upfront. And it had been kind of a struggle, because while my kits sell really well when I'm selling them and people are seeing my displays, I find that retailers aren't investing in making good displays for my product. And so I'm not really seeing a whole lot of reorders in wholesale. I only got 5 first orders at that show in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
So that was probably the most money I've lost, which in that case was probably only maybe $1,500 at that show, depending on what the ongoing revenue looks like from those wholesalers, but none of them have reordered from me. So that's probably about it. I try to really limit whatever I'm doing. I want to spend money to test things, but I also don't want to put so much down that if I lose all that's a really horrible business decision for me. So I try to always kind of play in between that, and whatever decision I'm making that could be a higher cost investment, I do work really hard to try to verify that. But I did not do a good job specifically on that one. But I think you
did a great job minimizing risk and the amount of money that you've lost. So I think that's really, really important, especially for small business owners. Like, yeah, it's important to trust your gut feeling, but sometimes even if your gut tells you that that's going to work, try to test it out first, experiment, and just look at the results before investing. or doubling down on something like that?
Totally. And I'd done a small wholesale show before that where I had done really well at. So I thought, oh, this makes sense. This is just a bigger version of that. But it was not. It was like a million times bigger. And like the people that wholesale Beanie Babies were there, which is like just an order of magnitude different for me for it to be laughable that I was even at the same show. Like it did not make any sense. So
What was the difference between these two B2B shows?
I think the difference was the focus. The show that I did in Baltimore, it's called ACC Baltimore, which is put on by the American Craft Council. That's in February every year. You can come a day early or 2 days early and do a little bit of wholesale. Mm-hmm. And in that show, there's still 3 days of retail after that. So it was a really easy, like it's an extra $400 I had to pay to do the wholesale side, which seemed like no brainer because I'll have 3 days of retail, which were really good 3 days of retail for me at this show. So to test out wholesale at a wholesale only show for that was really easy to try out. But I think at that one, the whole focus was on artists. Like that was an artist show. It's the American Craft Council. Show I did in January in Atlanta is called America's Mart. And yeah, just like I should have looked at the brands that go to that and the sort of scale of 3 different buildings that each have 15 stories in them and are just like, it's just crazy different scale and a different focus on brand over artist in a way that like I shouldn't have been there. It wasn't a good fit for me.
Right. So like the audiences were probably not a good fit for your business also, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the buyers weren't the sort of buyers I wanted to be talking to. I also think I learned a lot that my products, as much as I think that they're a really great fit for the right audience, I don't think my products are a great fit for wholesale because I think that a lot of the gallery owners, the retail owners, all these different people that are operating small shops and boutiques, what they're looking for is there's not a whole lot of people that are selling product like mine. They usually don't know that they're looking for a product like mine, but people don't go into shops looking for my sorts of products. Excuse me. It's usually a spontaneous discovery. They find something and go, oh my gosh, this would be perfect for whoever. And I think that's a struggle for people of knowing if this is something that'll connect well with their audience or not. And then I still struggle with how do I get people, the right sort of people in front of my stuff. Craft shows has been a great way for me to do that. But how does a person with a retail space or a boutique or a gallery, how do they know that their customers are coming in and are going to be looking for something like this too? So we haven't found a lot of overlap there that makes sense for wholesale yet. So I want to design products that I think are going to be more focused for places like that. Easier price points, easier to do, maybe different sort of styles that could be a better fit than my current kits.
Right. Okay. So last question for you, Tristan. What's next for Resident and you, for the next 5 years? What goals do you have?
I really struggle with looking out 5 years because if I think back 5 years ago, I was just starting this and had no idea what it would even turn into. I'm mostly focused on trying to figure out what this retail space looks like for us here in Pittsburgh. After that, I really do want to work on a lot of different products. I would love to be able to get some potential production help with this new space, better studio space, be able to get some people in to help me so that I can focus more on design work.
Okay. So before we end this episode, is there anything else that you'd like to say to the Hustler Nation?
I think everything seems a lot harder than it is. I think that's been the biggest thing that I mentioned earlier that I've learned. And it is so freaking rewarding to try to make that thing you've been dreaming about happen. So I've really enjoyed kind of breaking down that barrier of entry on stuff. If you can figure out a way to do it cheaply, go for it.
Perfect. Thanks for that beautiful message.
Thank you very much.
And I think that is really useful for people who are undergoing analysis paralysis or just procrastinating because just worrying too much, right? So I think this was one of the more interesting episodes on the show. So Tristan, best of luck with achieving your goals, for Resident with your new retail space, and keep on hustling on, okay?
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Hey guys, if you're interested in checking out what Tristan designs and sells with his company Resident, go ahead and check out www.residentdesign.com. And I promise you that the designs that Tristan brings to the table with his company is super interesting and will make for fantastic home decor. You would definitely be impressed. So just check out that website. So, and hustlers, that's the end of this episode, and I just want to add on a message for you. I'm always looking to make this show better, but I need your help to do that. I want you to go to hustler.com/feedback and let me know what you think about this episode. And also, if you want to learn how to make more money in the 21st century, how to navigate the digital economy, the Hustler website has a ton of tips and actionable guides on helping you get started. And just go on ahead to www.hustler.com and I'll see you on the next episode.